Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar this evening on Would You Like to Receive All of You? I'm James Blacker and I'm a wisdom coach, and I'm with Juliana Freeman, who's an access consciousness facilitator and founder of her own project, Access All of Life. Hi Juliana.
Hi James, good to see you. Hi everyone.
So we're going to talk about a huge amount of topics today, all based around the one principle of receiving and allowing good. I think we need to start by explaining what receiving is, because you and I, it's a phrase that we're very familiar with and we know what it can do. And so it's very comfortable. We talk about receiving the same way as we talk about going down the shops. But for other people, maybe it's like, well, what's the big deal with receiving? But it seems to me that it is a big deal. It's the basis of everything that can happen for us, right?
Sure, and how often do we really receive? Because we can consider that we're receiving, but are we really taking in the energy of what's being offered? Are we really participating with that energy, or are we simply believing that we're receiving when we may not actually be allowing and taking an energy into us? So I think it's an interesting question, because how much do we assume that we're receiving when there might be a whole lot more that we haven't even considered as part of what could be received?
So in all areas of life, whether it's money, relationships, our health, our creativity, our social life, anything creative we do, all of these areas we perceive that we're allowing in everything that's possible for us. But oftentimes we've actually closed down lots of possibilities for ourselves, which aren't necessarily going beyond what we already have. We claim those, we simply open up what we already have. For example, the rooting of money can root us, for example, or love or affection or kindness can root us. In just about everybody's cases, is not maximized or magnified to allow everything in.
Right, and because we've made conditions on what we're willing to receive and what we're not willing to receive about any of those areas that you're talking about, James, you know, if we have a really wide range of what's possible, quite often we're just receiving a small slither of what's possible for us because of our definitions and our judgments really about what it's okay to receive, how much is okay to receive, the things we absolutely will refuse to receive, and the things that we'd love to receive but don't think we can. So there's a whole lot of different things in there that we're trained into, and the conclusions really that we come to throughout our lives about what's possible and what isn't possible for us.
And one thing that we were talking about, I'm going headphones by the way, because I think that was okay. So the one thing we were talking about before we came on air largely relates to our personality and how we express that. And we were talking, for example, about presenting. So there's all these ways that we quote unquote should be doing presenting. We should look, how we should sound, even what kind of mood we should be in. And we were talking about that, because that's a judgment, that cuts down choice. So we're not allowing ourselves to receive our true personality or our true choice for how we'd like to be and express, because we have to fit in this mold. So in that instance, receiving is about saying, well, hang on a second, how can I do this with a lot more ease if I'm not worrying about all these rules, and I can just be me, or you can just be you. And we can go with the, not only is it brings a lot more ease, it's also more authentic. Well, it is authentic compared to that which is not authentic. Right,
because it if we're worrying about all those other things, then the more we worry about those things, the less present we can be in the moment. And, you know, naturally, when you're going to do something like this at presenting, there's an energy that comes up, which we can easily identify as nervousness or fear or whatever. But what if it's just energy? What if it's not anything particular? It's an energy that we're perceiving. And that could be excitement, that could be labeled as fear, but it isn't necessarily. And when we go down the road of saying it's fear or anxiety, we then can only have that. We can only receive that experience rather than being open to, well, what is it? It's an energy.
Absolutely. So if that nervousness arises, then if we're in judgment of that, then we see it as a bad thing. Oh, it's nervousness, I can't get rid of this. Whereas if there's no judgment around it, then we can probably perceive it in a different way.
Yeah.
So, well, what is this trying to tell me? And actually, we can turn the nervousness into excitement. And it was like, well, hang on, actually, I think it would be more fun if we did this a different way. If we didn't play by the rules of what should and shouldn't be.
Yeah, and we don't even need to define it, because it is simply an energy, and we may be perceiving the energy of what the call's going to be, the people that are going to come on the call. It could be any number of things, so we don't even really need to define it. We just know we're experiencing an energy, and that can be whatever it is. We can choose whether that's going to be a problem for us or whether that's going to be pleasant, actually a contribution.
So would you talk for a second about to what degree judgment or judgmentalism of ourselves plays in the relationship between that and our choice, and how it shuts down our choice?
Yeah, I mean, judgment's kind of it's like a cornerstone to our entire reality. If you think about it, we're taught from day one, or well, perhaps a little bit later than day one, but we're taught to define, we're taught to judge, we're taught to assess, measure everything. If we're in a situation where we're in a Christian religion, we're taught that there's and even other religions as well, there's a punitive God, a judgmental God. So the framework of our entire reality really is based on judgment, discernment, measurement, and is very much takes us into the mental processes of dissecting. So we're dissecting our own behavior and what's possible for us. What do we have to be to fit in? It goes into so many different areas and so many different directions that it really is something that underpins the whole reality we've been brought up into. And so when it comes to choosing, in a way, what we have to do is clear some space before we can even be clear enough to know whether the choice we're making is our choice, or whether it's based on historical choices, or what we think is possible, what we think we can have and what we think we can't have. So it really is a big issue that we all meet every single day, because we're always making judgment calls, we call them, don't we? We're making a judgment call, and it's seen as a good thing when you have to make a judgment call. You have to decide, or you have to assess, how is this, and what shall I do with this? It's seen as a good thing a lot of the time in this reality.
Well, in The Power of Love, I like to teach a distinction between judgmentalism and an assessment. Because if I've got 5 minutes to get to the train, I can make an assessment that I'm not going to make it because it's a 20-minute walk.
Yeah.
That's a totally different cut and dried bit of information than me going into judgment over myself. Why didn't you leave enough time? Why haven't you? It's all set up differently, all that kind of thing. That's a totally different energy.
It is, and there's also the possibility of stepping into more magic. And yes, you might only have 20 minutes to get to the train, but what else is possible? And how can you shrink time so that you can, or expand time so that you can create more within what we've set as the boundaries? Because we're actually magical beings that can stretch all sorts of realities that we've agreed upon, time being one of them. Because I'm sure you've had the experience, James, of you've got to get somewhere and you've only got so much time, and then you get there and you think, how on earth did I do that? Because that wasn't really possible, but actually when we're willing to step into magic, the magic that we are, we can create beyond even those assessments or even those parameters that we think are real.
This is a step into some new ground. If I don't judge the fact that I haven't got 20 minutes to walk, maybe I can, if I don't judge that, my mind can be clear. Maybe I can get a taxi, maybe there's someone I can get a lift from, what else is possible, that kind of thing. So you're looking at a kind of you're taking that even further to a kind of quantum physics-y.
I am, yeah.
Which is probably something John does a lot as well.
Well, and the thing is, because we're interacting with the molecules of consciousness all the time, we're just not necessarily conscious that we're doing that always. But when we go into those relationships and just even allow the fact that that could be possible, that you could do that walk in 10 minutes, without really rushing, without creating any stress in your body. And even if it is normally a 20-minute walk, you could still create that by stepping into that possibility even.
Okay. I mean, there would be some structure for that, I presume, in your view, because I mean, if I could run 100 meters in 5 seconds, I'd be down to the Olympics claiming some gold medals.
Yeah, sure. But then when you look at those really top athletes, or football players or whatever, don't you sometimes see them and you think, how did they do that? They've tapped into something that's beyond the mind, it's beyond the judgments, it's beyond the definitions and the limitations that we think we are bound by as human beings. What if we're really so much more than that allows us literally to step into magic, what we would call as magic?
Well, absolutely. I think probably the word I would use there is genius, so a similar kind of thing. What you use with magic. I mean, in sport, no problem. I actually expand that to how can you, for example, how can you use genius when you're talking to your mother-in-law? It's the faculty of going beyond the logical, conventional mind to receive information, intuition, inspiration, all of these things that aren't often thought of as regular thinking, but have value and can give so much to us.
Right, absolutely. And that way we're receiving more of ourselves, and we're receiving more of the communion that's possible with the molecules of consciousness, the molecules of the earth, molecules of nature, all the different energies that are around us that we don't necessarily label or see are willing to contribute to us when we're willing to be that space of possibility.
Yeah.
So then receiving takes on a whole different framework or possibility, really.
Maybe we can come on to the really deep stuff towards the end, later on in the show, and start with some basics, because I wanted to work with, we said that we would talk about how we can welcome and receive all of our emotions. And I think that's a good place to start with something really, really here and now. What I'm noticing with a lot of the work that I'm doing is a pattern emerging where most of everybody has got into a way of thinking and being with their emotions, which means that 50% of them are welcome and the other 50% are cut off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, in a sense, quite understandably, but that we've been taught to move towards what we like and away from what we dislike. However, there's a difference between choosing a certain emotion and running away from an emotion that we already have. And so with the upbringing that we've had with the only allowing in 50%, what we're actually doing is we're denying ourselves 50% of ourselves. And as we talked about the golden shadow, there are aspects of us that are really beautiful, really powerful, really creative, really attractive, really generative, that we've shut down, and we only allow ourselves to reclaim those when we choose to engage with the whole spectrum of our emotions, 100% of them.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing really is also where we're stuck in polarity, because some things are good and some things are bad. And so here we are in the judgment again of labeling and defining what we will accept, what we will receive, and what we won't. So whenever we're in polarity, we're not in free choice. And when we're in that judgment process, we're creating barriers to what's possible for us to receive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really it's a lot about allowance of all of ourselves, so that it's fine if some days we're feeling really bitchy, what if that's okay?
Yeah.
What if it's okay that sometimes we just feel like crap, and that's okay, because I think once we acknowledge that, it dissipates a lot of charge around it.
Yeah.
When we isolate something, we create a charge around it, don't we? We create
we do.
Yeah, we create a place of refusal, which actually increases that energy.
And the difficulty is that the thing that we want to achieve is the other side of the charge, the other side of the fear.
Well, is it?
Well,
is it the other side of the chart?
Really, the emotion isn't the problem.
Right, because actually, if what we're seeking is oneness, oneness is beyond polarity. Oneness is bigger and includes everything. Consciousness includes everything, allows everything, and doesn't judge it.
When we're in separation and we've judged an emotion off, so we've put it away, and we deny ourselves whatever is the good underneath what we think is there to be feared.
Yeah, well, it may be that there's a good thing underneath it. It may be, but it also may be that sometimes we're just bitches. What if that's okay and that's not a judgeable offense?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, because who said that it's not a totally okay thing to have days where you just feel like that, and it's okay, and we don't make it significant, and we don't make it significant that we have to be good, because that in a way is one of the things we're taught as children. We're taught we've got to be good little girls and good little boys and fit the mold.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole shadow thing begins in the first place, because all those things that don't fit the mold, whether that's your family's mold or religion or school or whatever, anything that doesn't fit that mold gets shoved away.
Yeah.
So then that creates all the places we reject within ourselves, or we fear will be rejected by others. And that's all based on the judgment. And it just creates lockdown. It creates barriers to what's possible and what we can receive of ourselves, of life, and of everything, really.
There's a very subtle paradox around the judgment, isn't there? Because when we want to let go of the judgment, on judgment, and at the same time, that if we're not careful, that can create a notion of perfection that we think we can reach in terms of not judging ourselves. And as you say, we need to. That's why it's a subtle little thing to play with, that we can just let ourselves go with how we are.
Yeah, and it's like when you know, how many times have we gone out into say London tubes? It's my favourite example because I've struggled with London tubes for years. You know, I worked and lived in London for a long time, and being a sensitive person, found that the energies on the London tubes were really pretty difficult to deal with. So I created all sorts of barriers and protections around myself, and as I trained in different disciplines and esoteric schools and whatever, I learned more and more complicated shieldings and protections and whatever that were supposed to keep me safe from all these nasty energies that I decided were going to really affect me badly, which they generally did. But what I discovered was that actually those protections, those barriers that I put up, created more of a problem than if I would just allow the energy to flow right through me and not have a point of view about it. It's the points of view that that's a bad energy or that's a negative energy. And it certainly did create discomfort in my body initially, which is what caused me to try to protect myself. But it's an example that I'm giving because it's what we do at all levels of our life. We set up barriers to protect ourselves or to protect others from us, or all sorts of different things, but actually they don't work. What really works is to be willing to allow it all in and allow it to flow through us and not attach to it.
Yes. So, which is where I was going with the emotional mastery, because it's an understanding of how it's okay or safe to do that. So you see, it's a stepping into that way of being, which is new for most people.
Right. And, you know, I feel and sense that we are all infinite beings with infinite possibilities, that we create everything that we have in our lives or don't have in our lives. Everything is a creation. And so as infinite beings, would we require something to keep us safe? Or would we simply be the safety?
So this is teaching from access consciousness. So as I understand it, one of the main things is that you would, rather than going to conclusion, you would wish to retain awareness.
Yes.
Is that right? You live from awareness. So
Yes.
would it be the case that you can trust your awareness to let you know whether a certain situation is safe or not, or good or not?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you for that, James. That's great, because yes, as the more we're willing to step into the infinite being that we actually are, we truly are, the more awareness we will have, and that awareness will guide us to avoid certain situations or go to certain situations. And there's the safety, if you like, if you want to call it safety. It's that we're guiding ourselves to situations that will be a contribution to us, or that we can be a contribution to. And then we don't have to have the barriers and the conclusions about it.
Okay.
You know, because you can look at somebody and you can, you know, they might be dirty, they might be wearing dirty clothes and, you know, be a bit disheveled, and you can make a conclusion about them of, say, for example, oh, you know, they live on the streets or whatever. You can make a conclusion about that person based on their appearance, which has absolutely nothing to do with who that person is, but it's all of the definitions again and the judgments that we make about what that person's capable of or what they're not capable of. But they're also infinite beings, so there's unlimited possibilities. But when we view somebody within a particular framework or a judgment, that's all we can see, and we're not allowing ourselves to receive anything outside of that. So it comes back to receiving, because everywhere we make a judgment, we basically put a box around that thing and said, okay, I will receive within this little framework, and I won't receive anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Because that's what judgment does.
Okay. So we've got people are now asking questions on the Facebook page, and
excellent.
We introduce that. So if anyone else wants to post or ask a question, they can do that through the Facebook event page, either by posting or commenting on a post, or I believe there's actually there's probably a button on there by now with a ask a question. Okay. So before we go into a couple of those questions, I think it's best if we introduce the notion of what a clearing is.
Yes. Okay.
So
excellent.
We've kind of got two audiences on the show at the moment. So we've got the friends of mine and the friends of yours.
Yeah. Okay.
Mine, some are familiar with access consciousness and some aren't. For yours, most of yours all will be. So for some of the people that I know, they'll be listening to some things and saying, "What's that all about?" And that's a bit out there for me.
Yeah.
One thing we do both in access consciousness that you do, and I'm familiar with access, but I'm not an access consciousness facilitator like you are. So when I do a clearing, what we're talking with clearings, folks, the principle is simply that somewhere we've got a stuckness or an attachment or a judgment, and we're letting that go so that it's no longer affecting us. So when I was running my courses, I would simply ask people if once we identify something that they're stuck with, if they'd simply like to let it go. Mainly because I didn't want to get sued by Gary. Now, so that was kind of my version of the clearing statement that you guys use, which is a bit, and I was happy to go with "Will you let it go?" because I noticed that actually I could invoke the same kind of power and energy, but you guys have a slightly different clearing. It's and for those who haven't heard it for the first time, it does sound a bit strange, and the fact that it sounds strange is a good thing, because as I understand it, you're not necessarily meant to intellectually pull it apart. We're talking about shifting with energy again, so it kind of hits you. Is that right?
Well, yes, it shifts energy and it fries people's brains, which is part of the purpose as well, to get us out of the mind. So with the clearing statement, what we're doing is we're again on the premise that we are infinite beings and that we've created everything. We're going back to the source of the creation, whatever lifetime that was in, because we come from different lifetimes, we carry things through. Going back to the source, almost like going back to the roots of a tree and back to the seed, so that when we can dissipate that energy, we can clear that energy right the way through all the different levels of creation that have been added to it. So that's the purpose, in a very small nutshell, that's the purpose of the clearing statement. And we use the terms POC and POD, which is POC, point of creation, and POD, point of destruction. So I'm going to, I'll share the clearing statement with you now, but Just so you know, that's what POC and POD is. And so the clearing statement, what we would normally do is to bring an energy up to the surface, and then we would say this clearing statement is a little bit like a magic wand that just takes the charge away and allows the energy to ripple through those layers and clear itself. So it's good and bad, right and wrong, POD and POC, all 9, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And so if you hear me saying that statement, that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing the energy that we brought up and allowing that to clear back to its roots with whatever the issue is. And if you want to use that clearing statement yourself and you can't remember it, you can just use POC and POD, POD and POC, whichever way you say it, doesn't matter, as a short form, because basically what you're doing with that is back to the point of creation and destroying it and allowing something new. Because when we do that, we're also clearing space so that something new can come in, so new choices can be made, and it opens spaces in the body particularly, but also in all aspects of our being.
Yeah. So, and this is your access consciousness version of my question. When I ask people after a sentence about something, I would ask them to let it go. So you would have similar, but then you would follow it up with POC and POD and slightly deeper or different sense. And the point to understand about it is that all of these things work on the premise that the basis underlying building block of our reality is consciousness, really.
Absolutely, and consciousness and energy, and
yes.
that we store energy in our body, in our being, in our molecules, in our cellular structure. We store energy. So all the points of view, the belief systems that we've accumulated or taken on from others, and that's a big piece. 98% of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are not even ours. So, that's a big, big piece, that we are like psychic sponges walking around. And so much of what we believe to be us, that we believe even, isn't necessarily truly ours. And a lot of that, we have a lot of tools in Access that we use to release a lot of those energies that we recognize that I've been carrying that for my family, or I've been carrying that for my culture or my nation or whatever.
Absolutely. Right.
That's a big piece, because if you've suffered from depression all your life and your mother suffered from depression, how much were you sucking out of her universe to try and heal her because you cared about her? How much are any of us on the call so aware of what the earth is requiring that we would be willing to take on some of the pain that's happening elsewhere on the earth? There's many different layers to this of what we do. And so even when we look at a sense or an emotion or whatever we call it, how much of that is truly ours? And so the releasing of all of it is part of what clears the space for us to be able to make choices about, well, who am I and what would I like to choose today? Because that might not be the same as yesterday. The choice I can make today can be completely different if we're willing to give ourselves that space.
Okay. So we're going to we're going to include clearings on the call today. So let's start now. Let's do a clearing for both you and I, and for everybody listening at home around. Let's do a clearing around everywhere where we've bought into the idea that all the thoughts and all the consciousness we have belongs to us personally. Okay. So,
right. And everywhere in that we're denying the incredible psychic abilities that we each have to suck in other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, points of view, beliefs, and all of that.
Okay.
Everything that is.
So all of that is quite a heavy load of stuff. So would you like to, so we feel the heaviness of it and then say, would you like to let it go?
So would you be willing to destroy and uncreate it?
Good and bad.
Good and bad, right and wrong, POD and POC, all 9, shorts, boys, and beyonds. Okay, so can I carry on with that, because that has not dissipated yet? So everything that brings up, everything that lets down, everything that you've done to absolutely believe that this is your issue, your problem, yours to solve, yours to heal, whatever it is, that is totally not yours. Would you please return to sender with consciousness attached, everything that is not yours? And that, by the way, is a gift and not a dumping. We are not sending any negative energy back to anyone else. I'll talk about that more in a second. But would you return it all to sender with consciousness attached, which is a total gift, and destroy and uncreate everywhere you have embodied somebody else's reality as yours?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good, bad, right, wrong. Pod, pock, all nine. Shorts, boys, and beyonds.
For the people listening and watching at home, the way they can prove to themselves that this stuff works is that you and I, Juliana, will start this call going, oh, we need to do a call, we've got to do a presentation, blah, blah, blah. And we'll do a few clearings, and by the end of it, we've got...
Yeah, you feel better, you feel lighter. Because
everything's lighter, because I can feel it clearly, really, so that's very nice. So,
yeah, and can I just talk about that? Very often we will take on things for our families, because when we're given the gift of life, most of us are really grateful for that gift of life. And we come into our parents willing to do whatever it takes to help them out. Yeah. And so if they've got sicknesses, if they've got points of view that are killing them or limiting them or damaging them in any way, we will try to take that on because we want to help them. So when I'm saying return to sender, that actually goes back however many generations, because that, you know, our parents probably took it on from their parents and their parents and their parents. Goes back, you could go back hundreds of generations, who knows? And we don't need to know. That's the other great thing. We don't need to know.
It's back that way, doesn't it?
Sorry, James, what?
It's all consciousness, it's all energy. That's why it goes back.
Exactly.
It's all linked up.
Yeah. So even if it goes back 15 generations to somebody who hasn't got a body at the moment, the next time they take on a body, they have more consciousness. So it's a gift. It's a total gift. So for anyone on the call, anytime you recognize I'm taking on something that isn't mine, you can simply allow it to go back to sender with consciousness attached. It's like a blessing, if you like.
What I find fascinating is that this can help with people who don't even believe in reincarnation.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, well,
yeah,
how does the energy feel? How can you feel it in your body? What feels heavy or what feels lighter? And just tune in. And then that just goes alongside looking after your body, because you're listening to it and responding to its needs.
Exactly. And can I offer another tool, which is the heavy and light tool that you've just mentioned? That in Access we have a point of view that whatever is true for you will make you feel lighter, and whatever is not true for you will make you feel heavier. So when we're struggling with these heavy feelings, well, do they really belong to us? Probably not. So it can be a very helpful gauge for, you know, that sense of lightness and space. Well, that's true for you. It may not be true for me. It may not be true for someone else. But if that's true for you, that's good enough. And that's another way of receiving yourself, because that's a truth. If that's a truth for you, that's a receiving of you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And what could be simpler than, do you want to move towards the feeling of heaviness or lightness? And then choose towards that. Whatever.
Tough choice, isn't it? Heavy, light, tough choice.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about idealizing things and giving them significance. And there's a very fine line there between really receiving the gift of something which is beautiful and light, loving, and then turning it into significance, which kind of makes it feel heavy. It goes beyond us, outside of us. And it's like, oh, because as soon as something gets extra significance, that comes with a fear that makes us need to control it, and then we start to destroy rather than create. Right,
and then we're afraid to lose it because it's become significant. So yeah, absolutely, and it takes us back into judgment.
We're not exactly nurturing it, are we? Not so much.
No. I mean, it's that old saying that, you know, we hear sometimes: if you love something or someone, set it free. It's the same thing with significance. If you want something to continue to exist, you have to be free. It has to be free, just as we have to be free. So yeah.
So there's again a subtle balance or a subtle paradox there between not doing that and at the same time being able to go deep into appreciation for something.
Right. Absolutely, and to be in complete gratitude.
Yes.
the gratitude is such a beautiful feeling, because, you know, sensation in the body, it's just it's warm and it expands and we feel light with it. It's got to be good.
Yeah.
It's got to be a contribution for us.
Flipping over from gratitude like that to idealizing and controlling and eating is an easy flip, but it's two completely different things, aren't they? They're opposite energies.
Well, very different energies. Yeah, very different. And you know, a lot of the time we create our safety or our stability in this world by what we know and what we define and what we make significant.
Yeah.
So the less we're willing, the less we have the need or the requirement to make anything significant, the more free we can be to have that choice that I was talking about before of, well, who shall I be today? What would I like to create today? And who shall I create myself as today? You know, but if we're always referring to who we were yesterday, then we really don't have much of a choice. And that's actually a great exercise to do, is at the end of every day, destroy and uncreate everything I was yesterday and all the conclusions and judgments I had yesterday. And, you know, just pock and pot all of that, because then when we wake up the following morning, it's a fresh new day and what's possible today.
Yeah. Time's getting on. Should we go some questions then?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so the first one is here. When you talk about receiving all of you, is that the same thing as being an allowance of all of me, the good, the bad, the ugly? How can I be in more allowance of the things that seem to stop me from being me, brackets the real me, and from choosing for me? Things like fear, doubt, procrastination.
So there were two parts to that question. Could you give me the first part again?
When you talk about receiving all of you, is that the same thing as being an allowance of all of me? I would say that it is. And she follows that up with the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, it is.
Receiving and allowance then.
Sorry?
The relationship between receiving and allowance.
Yeah, I mean, it is allowance. Absolutely, it is allowance. My sense is that there's more to receiving. That receiving is I don't know how to describe that exactly, but my sense is that there's more of an activeness in receiving than allowing. I think in receiving, there's like a two-way flow between what you're receiving and what's, I can't quite define that, but there's some sense in which it's more. It's a little bit more.
I see what you mean. I think it's about, you know, as always, different words mean different things. I mean, if I'm not in allowance of myself, I might be shutting down some kind of proactive go-getting kind of force that I have. So I can be receiving that. If I don't allow myself to receive that, I'm also not allowing that aspect of myself to be seen or to be visible, to be contributed and enjoyed.
Right. And I think the next piece that the person goes into about the good, the bad, and the ugly is what we were talking about earlier on, which is, well, who says it's good? Who says it's bad?
Who's called it bad?
It's back into definition and judgment. So of course that does cut down allowance and it does cut down receiving.
And that comes back to the emotional spectrum, where people have gone to 50% of their emotions, because some are kind of like, we throw this one out and throw that one out, and these ones we can keep because they're quote unquote okay. And now by going beyond that, we can allow the full spectrum of our experience and therefore allow the full spectrum of ourselves.
Well, and we can even go beyond emotion, actually, because we can go into a space where everything is just an experience that's interesting, and we don't necessarily need to even have an emotion about it. We can enjoy the experience of it, but we don't necessarily need to go into having an emotion. I mean, that's a whole other subject, but I'm just throwing it out as a...
I would see enjoying a positive emotion as part of receiving what that moment of this life means for me. And I would see enjoying the so-called negative emotion of that. If something makes me feel sad or whatever, I'm actually happy to feel into that. Because it's not something I'm shutting off. It's like, well, hang on, that's part of me. There's something there I want to honor about myself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not, yeah, I'm not saying we wouldn't have those experiences. I'm just saying it doesn't have to, like, there's something about emotion that can get sticky if we go too much into it. Absolutely. So, you know, when it's
experiencing it, or are we identifying with it?
Right. When it's an experience, it's almost like it's coming into us, we're receiving it, we're playing with it, and then it flows out. It's not significant, it's not being attached
like
to.
You say, it doesn't stick us.
Yeah. Sorry?
Like you say, it doesn't stick us.
Right. I thought you were talking about Snickers, and I was thinking, what? Okay, fine, got it. So there was a second part to that question.
Yes. And how can I be in more allowance of the things that stop me from being me, the real me, and from choosing for me, things like fear, doubt, and procrastination. So how can I be in more allowance?
Yeah. So one of the things that I was really with today was the degree to which we create barriers, and those barriers are what prevent us or restrict how much we are willing or able to receive of ourselves or of the world. And as I see it, there are multiple barriers that we set up, and some of those barriers are internal, which are, you know, I'm not good enough, or I'm in fear, or I'm in doubt. And all of these barriers can become distractions in themselves, actually, that prevent us from being able to be in allowance of all those things. Again, they may not be ours. Fear and doubt may not be anything to do with us. We may be picking that up from someone else around us. We maybe have picked it up from our families or from somewhere else. So really just being aware of that and allowing it to be there, allowing it to just dissipate, send it back to whoever it belongs to, pock and pod it. There's a lot of different things we can do to create more space.
A lot of it's just recognizing and understanding where all this stuff comes from, you know, from the social conditioning, from being born into a fear-based planet where people are in that kind of way. And one thing I would add as well is I find that it's possible to become aware of how it feels in our body in the two different instances, when we're in allowance of ourselves and then when we're not in allowance of ourselves. So for me, when I'm not in allowance of myself, I know it in my body because my breathing changes, I'm trying to control the situation, my shoulders, like there's something happens in the muscles. So that's a totally different, being in allowance is kind of.
Yeah, that's great, James, because actually, you're absolutely right. And it's one's contractive and one's expansive, or light or heavy, or whatever way you want to describe it. But yeah, that's great to bring it to the body, because the body always does know.
Well, this is a very quick way for people to be able to notice and perceive, because one of the things that happens is sometimes when we're not in allowance of us, when we're in judgment, we don't notice it for an hour or a day or a year or for 10 years sometimes. So if we can have the on-off switch awareness of our bodies, then it helps us to notice it a lot quicker. And then, as you say, we're working with energy, so we don't always necessarily intellectually have to understand everything. It's like, well, why have I stopped breathing? What can I do to let go and return to the allowance state? Well, okay, maybe I wasn't in allowance because I was judging this and therefore I was trying to control this situation. So I've got some judgment that's causing me to be stressed and trying to control an external situation. So can I let go of the judgment of me, which, as you say, 98% of the time is somebody will have given me that judgment as a significance, and I can just let it go. By letting it go, I won't feel the need to control the external situation anymore. And
absolutely. And listening to the body is a fantastic key, and one that we have with us all the time. So how does it get better than that? You know, it's I mean, that's another thing about access, is we use questions a lot of the time. So if there's ever a stuck energy, we can be asking, well, what is this? You know, who does this belong to? Is this mine? What's going on here? Can I change it? What can I do? And just by asking those questions of ourselves and the universe, somehow awareness just seems to plop in, you know, just because we're in question, because a question's a little bit like putting a key in a lock that opens something. And when we get the answer, we tend to close the door and say, oh, thank you very much. I don't, you know.
Absolutely. And we do questions as well. A colleague of mine who you might know read a book called The Science of Possibility.
Uh-huh.
And so we're also very much encouraging the questions as,
Yeah.
what if we don't live in a reality but in possibility?
Absolutely. Yeah, because then everything is open and the universe can bring us more than we could imagine, more than we could dream up, or more than we could create from the known universe that we've been part of. So I know we need to get to more questions. So
we've got one more, and then I want to, maybe if we've got time, we'll come to some of your nature stuff, I think. Here we go. Okay, so a question here. Could we please talk about being a highly sensitive person and how to receive all of you while at the same time feeling at ease in your body? Similar to what we both discussed about not protecting these energies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know this one intimately, having been a sensitive person all my life and saw it as a huge disability for a long time. And of course, realizing now it is a capacity, it is an awareness of the energy worlds and what other people are, what people around me and places around are experiencing or are holding on to. So the thing about, I'd like to actually do something about dropping barriers, because like I was saying earlier on, you know, I learned all these different techniques of putting up shieldings and barriers and symbols in my aura and all sorts of wonderful ways that seemed to be the protection that a sensitive person would require in certain sticky situations or in any situation. But it didn't actually ever work for me, because as soon as you have the judgment or the awareness that you need protection, you've already limited yourself to somebody that needs protection, if that makes sense. So as an infinite being, the more you're willing to acknowledge and allow that you are an infinite being that has infinite capacities, and that you can actually touch any part of the universe with your awareness, you don't need to have the protections, but you do need to be willing to drop barriers and allow energy to flow through you. And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, it's because there's some judgment or conclusion that you've made about, oh, that person's going to cause me harm, or that situation is going to be difficult for me, because then our thoughts create our reality, our beliefs create our reality. So by the time, you know, you've gone into that situation, you've already set that up, if that makes sense. But it might be good actually. Yeah, go ahead, James.
Well, I could throw into that, because for me, I was brought up into a family where I didn't have any kind of psychic awareness, or I didn't have any consciousness awareness or anything like that. So I'm interested in this aspect of the question that talks about feeling at ease in your body. So for me, I didn't feel at ease in my body. The solution back then was a lot of comfort eating and not knowing why I was comfort eating, not knowing what was going on. And that was very much a way of coping with the situation, because those awarenesses were being blocked. In my conscious mind, I didn't even really have any knowledge or awareness that I had those to any great degree. So all of that was being shut down. And of course, we talked about the body being intuitive and feeling that. So shutting down with kind of eating foods you don't need is one way to kind of shut the body down so the awareness doesn't come in. So that's not necessarily an ideal way, but it is a part of the explanation of what happens, and that is changing.
Well, it is the strategy, actually. I mean, if you're aware of a lot of energies that you don't want to be aware of, shutting yourself down with food is a strategy to deal with it. It is a possibility that you
sometimes
can
I do it consciously. Even in the last month, it's like if I come back from something that's brought up a lot of stuff, it's like, right, I'm off for
right.
some
Well, but you're aware of it, so that's you know, that's fine. But and of course, the relationship with the body is a whole subject in itself. But you know, one of the things that happened to me when I was growing up was I was so sensitive, I was taking on everybody else's stuff. So I was constantly feeling ill, but it wasn't mine. Most of it was not mine. So having the tool of who does this belong to, and returning to sender, brought huge shifts for me, because I was able to suddenly realize, wow, you know, I was working clearing my mum and everybody in the family, you know, I'd walk into a room and suddenly get a stomach ache. Well, it was never mine because I didn't have the stomach ache when I walked in. But what we're trained to do is to think, oh, I've eaten something, I must have a stomach ache because I ate something. Well, what if it's awareness of energy, and this sensitive person that's asking the question, how aware are you? How much capacity do you have for picking up the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and energies of everything around you? And if you could begin to play with that tool, who does it belong to? And if you get any sense of lightness when you ask yourself that question, who does it belong to? That's because your body, your being is aware that it is not yours. That's truth for you. And you can return it to sender with consciousness attached. And then POC and POD anywhere that you took it on as real and true for you. So I know that's a lot of information. But
it is a lovely truth that Access Consciousness has got more tools than Halfords.
Yeah, we have a lot of tools. But you know, the thing about tools, James, is tools don't work if you don't take them out of the toolbox.
True. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You have to work with them. You have to practice with them and play with them.
And use the right tool for the right job. You wouldn't brush your teeth with your lawnmower. So.
No, absolutely. It could be a bit uncomfortable.
And so the last part of your answer was really going to where the questioner was going with that question about not protecting against other people's energies.
Right.
So,
yeah, because if there's the returning it to sender, and if you do find that you're taking on other people's energies, you have to look at why. What's the payoff for you? What have you made valuable or vital about that? So let me run a clearing on that. So for anybody that finds yourself taking on other people's energies on a repetitive basis, what have you made so vital about being the healer of the world and sucking in everybody else's negative energies, which is not helping anybody, and everything that brings up, everything that lets down, and everything that, all the secret hidden agendas that you might have around that, would you be willing to destroy and uncreate all of that now? So I'm going to assume that you're saying yes. So good, bad, right, wrong, pop, pop, and nine, shorts, boys, and beyond.
I was saying this while writing my notes, I promise.
I didn't necessarily mean you, James. I meant, you know, whoever that applied to. But
so,
yeah.
well, you were talking there about so perhaps you'd expand on the, you're talking about how it doesn't always help people if we just pick up everybody's psychic thing and this kind of, there is a degree to which we can do that, isn't there? So would you perhaps talk around the what's healthy and what's not healthy around using to contribute to other people?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if we go around taking on everybody else's stuff, are they getting the opportunity to become conscious? No, not really. So are we really doing them any favors? And are we really being a little bit superior in thinking that we can do that? You know, actually, if everyone is an infinite being, which seems true for me, then wouldn't it be kind? Wouldn't it actually be a kind thing to allow them to have their own awareness? Because we may be seeing what we think they need. They may not need that. They may not choose that.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at it through the lens that we have. So it isn't a kindness to the other person, and it certainly isn't a kindness to us, because then we're all clogged up with everybody else's energies, which means we can't truly be ourselves. So nobody really wins out of that.
Well, both you and I identify ourselves as facilitators.
Yes.
So that I believe that comes from the French word facilitate, meaning to ease, make easy passage or something.
Yeah.
And so that can be a service, of course, it is a service, that's why we do what we do, but it's not, there's a certain line beyond which it doesn't go, and really it's about the other, in a sense all we're really doing is happening to be in a moment where we're interacting with somebody who's ready to clear their stuff, and they kind of bounce off of us.
Well, and they're generally people that have asked us to do so.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing is whilst the facilitating can be a service and a good one, if we obviously don't want to go beyond and try and do too much and try to help too many people too quick. That certainly becomes an ego thing, and we get into, once it becomes unhealthy for us, that doesn't serve anyone.
Well, also, yeah.
We were talking about judgment earlier, weren't we? So anywhere where it comes from, judgment isn't going to be helping.
Right, and the access standpoint is empowering you to know what you know. It's not about me telling you what I know. It's not about me being the leader or you being the leader. It's about helping people, facilitating people to come to their own awareness to what's true for them, which is why the light and heavy tool is valuable, because, like I say, we have our bodies with us all the time, and so we can always judge or gauge, or that was an interesting little slip there. We can gauge, is this light for me? Is this heavy for me? And just see what awareness we can have. And it, like I say, it takes practice to have that sense of lightness or heaviness, because we're not necessarily trained to do, well, we're definitely not trained to do it, and we're not going to be necessarily familiar with it straight away. But it's like anything, the more you focus on it, the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Let's do a couple more clearings now, because we were talking about a word that we were going to use as the basis for this, which wanted to change. For me, it was something that is important to me, that I wish to, it's my choice to move into being unself-conscious. Not unconscious, unself-conscious, in terms of, I don't want to continue to live the way I have been, constantly with the mind chatter, constantly assessing, how am I looking, how am I sounding, all that kind of thing. My preference or my choice is to be the way a child would be, in terms of they're just out there doing their thing, they're not worrying about what other people are thinking. So so I'd welcome a clearing or two now, because obviously we're doing this live on air, and there's still an aspect of that, and it'd be really nice to get away from that, and we can go beyond that, just straight to really real.
Okay, well, so I'm laughing because that's not just necessarily a quick clearing, but we can
you're what is it? A certified something miracle worker.
I know. Well, okay, I'm a miracle worker. We're all miracle workers. So the thing is that in order to get out of the mind, we have to release the judgments. We have to be willing to go beyond the judgments, beyond the definitions, because children don't have that. Little kids are totally free of judgments. They just play, up to a certain age. And at a certain age, they'll begin to define, that's my toy, that's not yours. This is my house, this is my territory, this is what I'm allowed to do, this is what I'm not allowed to do. So unpicking all of that can take a little time, James. We may not be able to do all of that right now, but anywhere that we've given the mind, anywhere that we have made the mind the God of our world, anywhere that we have given the mind the supremacy of directing everything in our lives, and all the energy that brings up, would you all be willing to destroy and uncreate all of that now?
Yeah,
times a good zillion. Thank you. Good, bad, right, wrong. Pop, puck, or nine. Shorts, boys, and beyonds.
And me and my mind are having a chat now, and we're agreeing that neither of us mind the fact that I've got a mind and use that. We just don't want it to be given to going beyond its role as a calculator and a servant and into a master and dictating.
Okay, well, the access point of view is the mind is a terrible thing, waste it. So we have slightly different views on that.
We have slightly different views. I think that's similar to the emotional thing as well, because I'm happy to choose not to need mind, and I'm happy to choose not to need emotions. But as aspects of manifest reality that are there as an option to be experienced, I see nothing wrong with them. Whereas you access guys, you kind of go straight to it's almost like you all want to be cool cucumbers in the room.
I'm really happy that my mind remembers how to drive my car. I'm really happy that my mind can do all of those, jobs that I don't require huge amounts of present time awareness in, because, I've done them many times. I'm very happy that my mind will do all those things. But
what was the phrase again, please?
Sorry?
What was the access phrase?
Okay, so the mind is a terrible thing, waste it.
Okay, so if you explain it the way you just have, in terms of you allow it to remain, so that it can help you to drive and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Then if you want to waste the rest of it that does the judgment, I'm down with that.
Yeah, fine. So, it's the parts that interfere with our lives, that limit our lives, that because the mind is always based in the past. The mind will always refer to what's been known, what's been discovered, and what's been possible up till now. But you know the time we're in, James. We are in an extraordinary time on this planet with a huge opening, huge doorways of possibility for change. The planet herself is changing hugely. We're all evolving, and so the mind really is great. And there's so much from the past that's useful, but it isn't necessarily going to take us forward into a possible future that's never been on this planet before. So in my view, we have to get beyond the mind. We have to go into the infinite being of ourselves. We have to go into the awareness, the consciousness of what's possible. And that we don't necessarily know. And it's great that we don't know.
Absolutely. When we talk about going beyond the mind, the way I would see it is the old phrase, transcend and include. So I certainly want to go beyond the mind, and I retain the option to have it there if I want it.
Yeah, okay, that's great. That's a free choice.
But it's like you say, let's not get away from the main thing of that, which is going beyond mind.
Yeah.
Because living in the judgment and that self-conscious isn't much fun.
No, it isn't, and it's limiting. It's limiting, and who wants to be limited? It's. I mean, there are some people that actually are very happy to be within the framework that they've always known, and that's completely their choice. That's completely fine. How could I argue with that? I wouldn't dream of it. But that isn't my reality. What I'm choosing is to move into new territories, new possibilities, because I sense that that's why we're here. I sense that's what this time on Earth actually is for.
Well, absolutely. There's a bigger picture, like you say. And perhaps we can go into the area, we can talk about what you want and what I want. And the third aspect of that is what the universe wants, or the way consciousness is moving. And as you talk about the possibilities, the opportunities for change becoming quicker, it certainly feels to me that that's something that you're flowing with and running with and letting happen.
And there was a thing I saw the other day that the Schumann resonance of the planet, of the Earth itself, has doubled in the last recent times. I think I can't explain. I'm not a scientist. I just know that that's the frequency or the vibration that the Earth resonates at, the hertz, the number of hertz that it resonates at has now doubled, which is just an indicator. All I'm really saying with this is it's an indicator of massive change on the planet physically. So, yeah. So do we have more questions?
Can we go to a question about the 80%, 90% of what you're talking about I'm very familiar with, and there's an aspect that is kind of intuitively familiar but intellectually totally unfamiliar. So I'd like to, if we can, delve into your own personal understandings of what you would call subtle realms and nature and any kind of, I'm not even sure what the words are, but that kind of area of inquiry. So perhaps you could open some doors to things we might not even be aware of.
Yeah. Well, so this can come under the heading of receiving as well, because for many years I've been receiving a lot of communion and messages from different aspects of nature, which has included plants, so physical substance, plants and trees, and working with the spirits of those beings, which is an old, very old tradition, shamanic traditions. Most shamanic traditions have always had some kind of plant spirit medicine. So I've worked with those quite deeply, but I've also worked with unseen beings pretty much all my life. And I've had a lot of those beings who show up talking to me. And those beings are hungry for communion, more communion with human beings. Right. And that communion will very often include a contribution that they would like to be for us, that they would like us to be more in touch with the earth, in touch with nature, in touch with the spirits, you know, what we would call fairies and divas and elemental beings, the elements of water, the elements of fire, the sprites, the air beings. You know, there's so many different beings that exist in a parallel world, if you like, or a parallel universe, simply that they're not seen by us, by human eyes. But I've always been able to see them. I've always been able to hear them and communicate with them, or have them communicate with me. And they've just shown me the most wonderful realm of what could be possible if we were willing to increase that community, be willing to receive from them. So and I just, one more thing, just on a really mundane level, you know, if you go for a walk in a forest or a wild area, you know that there's no judgment there.
Yeah.
You know that you're totally received. You are totally received.
Yeah.
So what if it could work the other way, and you could begin to open yourself to receive everything that's there for you? That's from the trees or the grass or those unseen beings.
If we're talking about receiving, and if people, whatever name or area that we're talking about of those kind of intuitions and awarenesses, people have been in a context earlier in their life where they would be judged for having those, they may well have shut those down, mightn't they? That's what we talk,
absolutely.
That's what we mean when we talk about receiving, because we hope through this conversation to prompt people to realize that having shut those down, they can open them back up again. And what they think is, oh, that was insignificant, that was, you know, nothing real there, or feels heavy and closed down. Actually, maybe, do I know that I'm not allowing myself to acknowledge?
Absolutely, and there's a clearing there. There's a clearing there. So let me just to say before we do a clearing that I was aware of all these beings when I was very little, but then when I tried to share them with my mom, she told me they weren't real. Right. So I shut them all down. So I created a barrier there. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s and I joined an esoteric group in which it was perfectly normal to have these conversations that I opened it all up again. But this is what I was talking about earlier, about these barriers that we create, the places that we've decided, well, I can't be a seer because they'll call me mad. I can't talk to beings that nobody else can see because they'll lock me up. These are all barriers to receiving. And so the clearing I'd like to offer is, what do you know that you've been pretending not to know or refusing to know, that if you would know it, would allow you the greatness of every communion and every receiving that's possible for you? So anything that would not allow that with total ease, would you be willing to destroy and uncreate it?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Good, bad, right, wrong, pop, pock, or nine, short, spoils, and beyonds. So what do you know that you've been pretending or refusing to know, that if you would allow yourself to know it, would generate a life and living of communion with all beings and contribute to the greatness of you? Anything that doesn't allow that, would you destroy and uncreate?
Yes.
Thank you. Good, bad, right, wrong, pop, pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds.
Thank you. Yeah, that really is a contribution to allow that in. And we've got some feedback for you from the Facebook event page.
Thank you.
It says, thank you, Juliana. What a contribution you've been to me tonight, with 3 smiley faces there for you.
Oh, nice. Thank you. That's great. How does it get better than that? That's brilliant. So just what I would really like to do, James, is can I just take you guys through a little exercise or something to just release or drop some of the barriers, just so you can have an experience of what it's like to be without some of them. So great.
This is the exercise promising us called dropping beneath barriers, isn't it? I mean,
that's right.
It works really. See, I've been looking forward to this, so yes, please.
Okay. So just take a few deep breaths and allow yourself to be as relaxed as you can, totally relaxed. And then just, if you're really willing to, as much as you're willing to, just allow all the barriers that you've erected, all the barriers that you have around you, within you, to drop.
Okay.
Allow them just to drop into the ground.
Yep.
And all the barriers that you don't even know you've got,
Mm-hmm.
would you allow those to drop?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So just keep dropping, and keep dropping. So dropping all the barriers to who you think you are, all the barriers to who you think you're not.
Yeah.
All the barriers to who you can be,
Mm-hmm.
and all the barriers to who you can't be. All the barriers you have to who you don't want to know who you are, the pieces that you've decided you don't want to know, you don't want to go there, that's too weird, it's too way out, people will think you're mad, whatever it is, all those barriers, definitions. Keep dropping them down into the earth and allow yourself to feel tendrils coming out through your feet down into the earth, really deeply connecting into the earth. Keep dropping the barriers. Just put that on automatic. Keep allowing them to drop.
Okay.
And if your mind gets in the way, just push it down. Push it down with the barriers. It is one of the barriers. Push it down.
Can I allow the mind to be there, to do what it wants? Well, I need to push it down, do I?
Just push it down. It can come back after this very short exercise.
Okay.
Just push it down for now. And just notice what that's like in your body, to be there, to just be in that space with the barriers down. And tap into the cells and the molecules of your body. Tap into the energy in those molecules. And to the space that's in those molecules.
Okay.
And allow that space to expand. Make it bigger. And now begin to expand your whole energy field out to the edges of the room you're in, the building you're in. If you feel a barrier coming up, you can choose to push it down or not, your choice. But just keep allowing yourself to gently expand. And allow yourself to expand as big as you choose. You can go right out to the land you're on. To the whole of the planet, if you choose. And beyond, if you choose. So in this space, just notice, can you find the edges of you?
I was almost asleep. No, I wasn't really aware of me at all much.
Okay, so that's what's possible when we drop our barriers, when we expand our fields, when we tap into the molecules of consciousness that we are, to the space that we are, and to our connection with the earth. And the more we do that, the less the mind has any control over who we are and what we choose. It's still there, it's still functioning, it's still on autopilot, it's doing whatever it's doing, but it's not running the show. Because as you can perceive, the space that you can occupy is so vast. How could you not be an infinite being? Mm. And if there are no definitions, no edges to you, why would we want our minds to define who we are when we can have that much space? And what can we receive from there? That's where true receiving begins, is in that spaciousness, is in that vastness and that communion. That's truly who we are. It's truly what's possible. And it's way more exciting than everything we've, the limitations that we've known.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
There was something right at the start of that you talked about, which resonated for me, is going beyond who you think you are, going beyond who you think you're not. That's certainly a gift and a choice for me. That just gets in the way.
Well, and that's the choice beyond the mind. That's because.
Well, that's the thing. And whether we talk about whether we like emotions or we don't, or whether we're people who want to go beyond them or not, the one thing that is occurring to me that is in common for both our audiences is that the most important thing is choice. And if we do get into the mind and the judgments, then choice goes out the window. So certainly,
right. And
choice.
And the other thing about choice is that when we make a choice, it creates an awareness, because if we choose this, then something opens up that we can be aware of, and then we can choose again if that doesn't seem like a good choice. Yeah. So it's a great way of increasing our awareness or our consciousness by choosing.
Sometimes the choice and the awareness almost the same thing. They happen at the same time, and it's kind of a more fluid kind of popping open into something.
Yeah.
Because when the choice happens, when I do choice and it's genuine choice and it's not from my mind, it has a different quality to it. That choice has a different quality to it. It's almost like someone's already taken care of it for me. It's kind of, like when you rock up at a hotel and everything's there for you. It's kind of that kind of feel.
Right.
It's very easy, almost non-existent. Which is kind of
when you're
you're
in the flow. You're in the flow with the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which there was no greater example of that for me than when I went to Denmark and Sweden last year, and everything was in the flow of the universe. It took care of itself. So, which was probably the only way that was ever going to work or happen, which is a rare and unique experience to feel something happening that way, which I hadn't experienced. I hadn't even considered was possible as an experience for a human to have before then. That was really amazing.
Fantastic.
And also,
and what else is possible?
Well, you got some feedback. That's what else is possible. You got some more. Another thank you, Juliana, 4 exclamation marks, or maybe 5 exclamation marks. So,
great.
Very well. And for some reason, the number of viewers we've had has gone up during the show.
Great.
I don't know how that's happened, but anyway.
We must have been an invitation, James.
Obviously.
Great.
Baffling in a good way, that one. Mm-hmm. So it's, sorry, come on.
No, I was just saying brilliant. I'm happy.
Thank you so much. We could talk.
Thank you.
We're now 20 minutes past our...
Yeah. Thank you, James. It's been great.
Pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll see you again. So we need to share some... We've both got a project each, I believe. So do you want to talk about your website and then your upcoming project, or you certainly want to mention...
Yes.
accessalloflife.com?
Yes. So my website is accessalloflife.com altogether. And I'm working on a series, a telecourse series, to deepen this conversation that we're having tonight, which will go very much more deeply into the barriers and going beyond those barriers. and what is possible beyond those barriers, and how much can we receive when we're willing to allow all of those. So that will include a lot of clearings and a lot of exploration of that. I also didn't say earlier, but if anybody wants more information on the clearing statement, you can go to either my website or theclearingstatement.com. And yeah, that's probably me.
And your website is www.accessalloflife.com.
Yes, yes, it is. It is. Oh, I just want a very quick short thing to say that Access has a body process called the bars, which is a fantastic way of clearing space in your mind and getting beyond these judgments. So you can check out on accessconsciousness.com for a person near you who does the bars, who offers the bars.
We could still be doing this at this rate. Let's get it.
I'm done, Joe.
Okay, my website is at www.jamesblacker.com, and that's the power of love, coaching and consciousness. And my next webinar, I don't have a date for it yet, but it will be on my own program, The Wisdom Diet, which is for weight management, which teaches and explains about a better way for how we can have weight management with much more ease. It turns the conventional way of dieting on its head, with the phrase that there is a better way, because the way that we've been taught to diet simply doesn't work, and it's quite uncomfortable, horrible anyway. So I'm going to be doing my first introduction of that program, which we've taught before, the first webinar for that as well. So if you want to know about that, you can subscribe to my newsletter through my website at jamesblacker.com.
Great.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. Okay.
Again, if you want to. Goodbye.
Bye.